I want to first tell you, as my little tag says here, I'm Karen Warner. I am with the CDE Foundation, and I am the STEAM Program Manager. And really excited to try this pilot with teacher coaches. I was a teacher coach myself before coming to the foundation, and you all have a really special place in my heart. I know the hard work that you do each day, especially now having to probably do a lot of that virtually. So welcome. This is where we're going to go today from now until 6:30, and I'm going to now pass the baton over to my teammate Glennon, and he will take you the next step.
Thank you so much, Karen. Welcome, everyone. We're incredibly excited to have you. This is a tremendous group of really talented people, and it's really just an honor to be the group that's convening and enabling the collaboration among this group to happen. And we have over 25 districts. We have folks from early ed through high school. We have representation from large urban to rural, and the entire state is really covered in our community of participants. And one of the things that we hope you take away and engage with is really embracing the power of this network. So engage with each other, be good stewards of this network. What I mean by that is if somebody from this network emails you, has a question, respond quickly, and be candid and open and honest with folks in this network. One of the things that we haven't done yet, and I'm previewing to everyone today, is that on our community website, that is a Google site, we would like to publish a contact list with everyone. If you object and don't want to be on that contact list, please let us know. But otherwise, we wanted to make it as easy as possible for everyone to connect both personally and professionally as part of this experience. And there's a lot of power in this network. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our CEO at the CDE Foundation, Jessica Howard.
Jessica Howard, I'm the CEO of the CDE Foundation, and I'm sure you're not all here to stare at my face, so I'm going to hand it over in a second. But I just wanted to join you for the beginning to say how glad I am that you're joining us, that you're on this adventure with us, and how excited we are to have you join us today. The work that you all do is empowering on so many different levels for you, for our districts, for educators, and we're just here to continue supporting you and exploring that together. This is something we heard over the years through our California STEAM Symposium community. Prior to me being in this role, I was director of our STEAM initiatives. And I had dreams about what else we might do during the year between STEAM symposia. And not until we had Glennon and Karen join us did we ever even think we might be able to dream beyond and consider our time together between. And you are all helping us make those dreams come true. So we are really excited. Glennon mentioned the power of the network. We're looking at it right here. And we just want to thank you again for being on this adventure with us. And frankly, being willing to share not only what makes you laugh, but so much of what you're already learning and growing through. And about sharing, we're happy to share with you other members of our team. So I don't want to spoil the next transition. I'll just say I'm very excited that Gustavo has joined us. Glennon, I'll let you take on the introduction there. But I just wanted to say hello and personally thank you for joining us today for our next series of adventures together. Have fun.
Thank you, Jessica. We really appreciate it. And I'm really excited to introduce Gustavo Morales, who will be kicking us off with our first keynote. And he is an expert in many things. He has been a tremendous partner at the CDE Foundation, and he works specifically in the labor management initiative, which may feel like a unique relationship for coaching, but their pillars and his experience in coaching prior to working in labor management were paramount, and why we were really excited to bring him to you all. So Gustavo, it's to you.
Thanks, Glennon. I'm wondering what those other things I'm an expert in as, but we'll have a chat later. So appreciate the introduction and the time and really the space to come together with this group. I'm really excited to share just a few thoughts of, my experience, my background, and why I was chosen to speak today. In fact, when I was asked to speak a little bit about my experience with coaching today, I immediately got a flashback to my first coaching experience. I was at my first job out of college and working at an environmental justice organization, gung-ho, I'm going to change the world. And once I got there, I got a big roadblock of I don't know everything. So my supervisor thought to me, hey, let's get you a coach. Let's improve your skills. Let's think about things differently. And I was excited, right? I've always been the kid, overly prepared, come with notes and questions to ask. If you know me, I love Excel sheets. I don't know why, but I love the organization and changing colors. You can ask any one of my colleagues. I was also the kid in college and high school that would raise their hand, really high in the air after the professor would ask, does anybody have any questions at the end of a session? So as my coach entered, he came in and explained, in fact, we won't be using any of the questions that you've put together. This is an opportunity for you to do some self-exploration and really think about what answers you might have in you, living in you, and really take that out of you. That shock look in my face was my immediately first response, hold the phone. I thought you were supposed to give me the answers. Instead, my coach explained that he was just my guide, that he'd be helping me navigate my own experience to help find the answer that I have within myself. And we then jumped into a conversation where he established some norms and we got started. It started making sense after he started asking me, when was the last time you changed your mind? And so I quickly thought to myself, when was the last time I changed my mind on something big? Did someone tell me something differently? And then I thought, oh, they're right. I'm going to do that now. Or did I really have to do some self-exploration? When I think back about my last time I've changed my mind, I was in a jury room and I thought this one thing and everybody in the room thought something else. We literally had to go back on the stand and hear evidence again so I can hear it and think differently because I had heard it wrong. And I had to come back into that jury room where everybody was accepting and they were okay, and we've all been there. But it's hard to think of another experience where we changed our mind on something big. In fact, I challenge you to take a quick second and try to think of the last time you changed your mind on something big. Why and how did that happen? Right? It wasn't someone telling you. It was you really lifting it up out of yourself, and your experience really had to lead you there. The coaching experience hopefully is that for you, whether you're the coach or coachee. The coach giving the opportunity for someone to really see for themselves how to change their practice into something better. And the coach really changing their own perspective as they navigate the coachee's experience. My sessions eventually led to a beautiful relationship with my coach. I still see him today. We go to dinner and now I coach him sometimes and I don't have to pay him, thankfully. And we have a conversation over dinner and we explicitly ask ourselves as we switch roles of like, do I have permission to, now start coaching you? And I'll get into that a little bit more later. But now that coaching relationship has really led me to be stronger in the coaching relationships I have outside of my coach. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to do that. Think about your first coaching experience. Think back to when you were in that room with that other person. What did you feel? I'm trying to ask you to capture that in one word. Why don't we start putting that into the chat? I mean, mine was definitely shocked because they didn't have the answers for me. But why don't you put into the chat, imposter, that's 100% right. Anxious, vulnerable, nervous. Appreciative definitely came after. Ill-equipped, God, yes, ill-equipped. I did not have open. I always thought raw, right? Frustrated because they weren't giving me the answer. Intimidated, right? They're coming at it with something I don't know. Am I ready for this? Unsure. Frustrating is definitely in the beginning and unsure. Over the last 13 years, I've had to really navigate those exact experiences. I've had the privilege of coaching over 50 staff colleagues, district leaders, and others from Pittsburgh, Inglewood, Downey, LAUSD, and my staff. The experience of coaching has taught me a lot of patience, right? Increased my listening skills, and most importantly, build bonds with my coaches that still remain to this day, and my coachees. Building that established trust really takes time to get past that nervousness, get past that imposter syndrome. Allowing that other person to be your guide takes a lot of work. The most difficult part of that experience is, holding back all the presuppositions of what they do and why they do it. Right? I want to fill in the blanks for them. I want to answer the questions. I want to do the work for them. I'm a worker bee. I love doing work. Let me do it for you. Let me take it off your to-do list. But I have my own work. So in a way, we are growing together. And I take reprieve in knowing that everyone is working continuously to be better learners and educators. Over my career, I've worked in politics, environmental justice, community schools, education, and my career eventually landed me at my current position with the California Labor Management Initiative, partners with STEAM at the CDE Foundation, proud partners with all of my colleagues that you've seen already and working in the background. I see you, Jesse. If you haven't heard of CalMI, we work with school districts and county offices up and down the state, really to provide a space for labor leaders and management to create joint solutions to some of our education system's greatest challenges. We ask our participants to work a little differently, something that we're going to ask you to do today. To think about things differently, specifically thinking about building opportunities for voices of typically marginalized staff to drive improvement in their districts. How do we lift up those voices that don't normally have a place in leadership? As a part of CalMI, we also ask district leaders to start with our 3 pillars of trust, equity, and communication. These 3 pillars should be the beginning of a lot of our conversations. Where are we in trusting each other? Is this equitable? Do we have room to communicate and lift up those voices that aren't normally lifted up? I will admit, the hardest pillar to address is trust. Together, we can sit in a room and look at data and work on communication and equity and talk about what is everyone's experience. But looking at data and testimonials of trust is a little bit harder. Trust, on the other hand, is built over time through a combination of follow through and shared experience. You can't just sit in a room and just start working with someone and say, I trust you, right? Or let's do this activity so that I can trust you. The trust fall doesn't work right away. Please don't try it. But I think the opportunity that is really built is the opportunity to build a foundation around, I know I can count on you, you can count on me, and I know that you are true to your word. My hope over today in the next few minutes is to be able to share some common language with you to begin your journey with your fellow teacher coaches. I will respectfully concede that I don't have all the answers or terminology or even experience that's in this Zoom room. There's so much experience that I respect and recognize. Instead, I hope to give you a place to start, an ability to build community with your partners and your cohort through some shared language. In fact, I invite you to add, delete, augment, or even recreate anything that you're going to.
Hey, Gustavo, you went on mute.
I don't know why I did that, but here we go. I invite you to add, delete, augment, or even recreate anything you hear this afternoon. It is only when you apply your local context and your own experience that you truly make the coaching experience yours. So I invite you to do that as you start your relationships today. Think about what it means to you, what these words mean to you. Does this word fit? Can you create a different word? Is there a different step you might add? Is there a different norm? So speaking of norms, let's start with some. By developing norms, you agree with your partner that you're adhering to some shared behavior, to set some boundaries on your conversation, and allowing the other person some permission to know where to go and where not go, and something that you're trying. The first that I always try to work on, and I already know that I'm doing a bad job, is pausing, allowing some time for thinking. Even if it feels awkward, those 5 seconds I just took right there allowed me to put my shoulders down, think a little bit about what to say next. It allows some time to reflect, catch your breath, think about what the other person is saying. That time and pausing, while awkward, as educators, we have this think time and pausing, and we know how to do it in the classrooms. But sometimes with our fellow adults, it takes a little bit more time and courage. It's not an opportunity to jump in, right? We're not looking for as your pause as the other person to jump in. Instead, we respect that as an opportunity for those people to, for your partners to really understand what you're saying. That next one is paraphrasing, using terms or sentence starters like so, or you're thinking, you're saying, confirms to your partner that you heard and understood. Questions can be an opportunity to dive a little bit deeper into what they were thinking. Open a door that you see closed. How can you use a question to really allow you to understand further what the other person is thinking? Probing, using gentle, open-ended questions or inquiries allows for clarity. I'm curious about what you just said. Can you give me a little bit more? Understanding with your partner that these norms are really just an opportunity to get a little bit more context and ensure that there's a shared understanding. Putting ideas on the table is one of my favorite, because I literally put the idea on the table. It's letting go of ownership of your idea and handing it over to your coachee, your partner, your team, allowing them to use these ideas as a possible route to take, but not restricting them to only choosing that idea. I usually like to label it. Here's one idea. One thought I had was, and then releasing yourself from that idea and allowing the team, your partner, or others to really own it and drive it where it needs to go. Presuming positive presuppositions, assuming that the other's intentions are positive, promotes meaningful dialogue. We're all here for the same reason, right? We're all the go-getters, and a lot of people in this room I know are the people that rose their hand at the end of a session in college. So we know that everyone is here for the right reason. We're all interested in successful students and ensuring that positive education experience for our students and for our staff. Paying attention to self and others is being aware of how your partner learns and participates. It's important to your team. How might I approach this with that person's learning style in mind? How do I ensure that they know my own learning style? Some things I don't like to hear, and some things the way I approach my work. And rather than pushing a personal agenda or what you might know or understand something to be, how might we build a curious mind by pursuing a balance between advocacy and inquiry? We give ourselves permission to be curious, to be learners, instead of holding our ground, right? Like I did in that jury room. As we start setting those norms, we also start setting the stage. How do we build an environment with our fellow teacher coaches to really understand that the other person is taking it seriously and I am taking it seriously? We prepare an environment. If we were in person, of course, we clear the stage and we ensure that we're in a room together and we're highly focused. But if we're on Zoom, things take a little bit more time, and ensuring that you have that clear space, clear time, that you've set the stage for the other person to really lift up and go where they need to go. Reduce interference, right? Right before this, I went out and my landlord is here. There's an inspection. So I went out and I let him know, hey, from this time to this time, this is going to be sacred time. I'm going to go live. So I'm going to ensure that, nobody interferes with this. We do that a lot of times. So how do we ensure that with our coachee and coach mentor that we are saving that time for what we said we were going to do? We're going to be present, and how we can tell, right, when you're working on emails, as I shift, you can tell when someone's not taking it seriously. And some nonverbal cues, right? Understanding yawning means a lot. The final key to coaching, I think, as we start setting the stage, is that permission to coach. I always think about this one experience. It sticks out with me. It's this time where I dropped the ball on something, right? I just dropped the ball. I knew it. My supervisor knew it. And I knew my supervisor was going to have a talk with me. I was so scared, right? I knew I did it wrong and I have no answer for it. I just knew I was wrong. As she called me into her office, she started with her observation and I gave mine, and we went through the whole consequence, conversation. And I would admit, every consequence I got, I fully merited, like I fully deserved, and I'm not arguing what was said there. But after that, she began a coaching conversation about what my goal was, what I might do to carry out that goal, probing and paraphrasing. In the moment, it felt right, like she was helping me. But in hindsight, I know now it was a bit invasive. I was wrong in the moment. I had admitted I was wrong. I was raw. And I was, just embarrassed. And all of a sudden, I'm asked to think about what my goal is in life in this raw moment. And so, do I think she came in and trying to be manipulative? No, she was really trying to help. So I'm not trying to put any blame on her, but there might be an opportunity to really think about that space and ensuring that we ask permission and we over communicate, right? We think about what you need to be, where you need to be, not just setting the stage and my Zoom, making sure everything is right and I have a silent room, but also that you mentally are ready to go there, whatever you want to go with your coach and coachee. The permission doesn't just apply to my extreme situation, but it talks about if you're in the middle of a big project, is this the right time to coach? If something's happening at home, is this the right time to coach? So I invite you to think about that as you begin setting the stage. That experience really led me to think about how I interact with my staff. How can I be more explicit about how I approach conversations? Over communicating on the front end avoids confusion. Who are you in this conversation and what role are you taking? Be clear. I was having this conversation with my colleague Karen, and she brought up a really interesting quote. Am I here for a hug or am I here for a spank? And it's true. What am I here for? And it's important to over communicate right at the beginning. There are different conversations to be had. And I put together these 3 types of coaching in the way I approach it. There's one that's managerial, right? Observations and feedback. Are they saying what they said they were going to do that's in their job description? That's I saw this and this went right. I saw this and this went wrong. And your manager knows exactly how to approach that and where you went wrong, and you might have those conversations. A second coaching conversation might be around mentoring. It's an exchange of experience. This is how I approach my work. Oh, interesting. This is how I approach my work. This is something I learned. Oh, interesting. That route I took, and I want to also take that route. Can you tell me more about where to learn this? The cognitive coaching, right, is the guidance through critical thinking. That's where one coach assumes the guide and the other coach assumes the role of being guided. Taking that journey together, really talking about what are the steps we are going to take in order to get there. Being explicit from the very beginning. After establishing your norms, I encourage you to think about, as a coach, what might be some common habits you might develop. I again caution you to use these, what we're about to go through, to augment and think about what it is for your context. But your coach is really there to lift up something you might not see, might not know about, and what their experience might bring to the table to help you move forward. So as we start thinking about some common habits, what I like to call my roadmap, there are a lot of resources out there available that you might also develop your own roadmap. I highly encourage cognitive coaching, and I saw somebody put adaptive school principles in the chat. It is a fantastic, fantastic seminar. The Art of Coaching is a great book by Elena Aguilar to help further develop your coaching conversation roadmap. But for the sake of today, and for the sake of our cohort, some ways to really guide your conversations are to start by setting a joint goal. Sitting there and saying, this is for you, this is for me. Me as a coach, this is the journey I'm taking, and you as a coachee, this is the journey you're taking. Paraphrase and clarify. As you begin your conversations, some sentence starters you might have is, tell me what you mean by. So you're saying, and might you be able to tell me more about blank? Probing. As you start moving past knowing more about the context of the situation or the goal, what do you think and feel about blank? You're really navigating through a mansion, right? And seeing some rooms and doors that they haven't opened yet. How do you help them open those doors as they start navigating their way through that mansion? And my favorite of all time, what if the opposite were true? Finally, as you go through your session with your coach, you always want to check in and see how you did. What went well today together? Where do you feel comfortable? Where did you feel uncomfortable? What steps might you take after today's session as the coach and coachee? So as I close, I'm noticing I'm running out of time here, even though I said I was going to have extra time. There's no right way to coach, but there is a right way to ensure both you and your partner both have the same understanding of what is happening and what language we're using. What can help facilitate a healthy conversation and exchange of experiences? Well, you don't want to just give all the answers away. You don't want them dependent on you on the other side. You also don't want them to struggle and search for something they simply do not know. So that middle area is what you're aiming for. The experience of coaching has made me an intensely better listener by allowing myself to approach most conversations with a blank slate. It has allowed me to better understand others, both professionally and personally, and better understand what they mean to say. So again, STEAM team, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun to share my experience in coaching, and I'm not sure if we have any Q&A time, but I'll turn it back to you, Glennon.
Yeah, we have time for Q&A. Given the size of our group, we would like to just take any Q&A through the chat. So if you have questions for Gustavo, please share them in the chat. I would like to just thank you, Gustavo, for helping to set us up with some common language. We have a very diverse group here. We have people with a wide range of titles, from instructional coach to teacher on special assignment to many other titles. And so this is really foundational in helping us embark on this journey. So I'm going to pose it to the group. Are there any questions that you have that you'd like Gustavo to address? And I did mention in the chat that we'll share Gustavo's slides and his recommended resources on our community website with the rest of the resources from today.
So that I did give Karen and Glennon some resources, Larissa, and there's so Elena Aguilar also has she has a bunch of art of coaching and a resource guidebook that's amazing. She talks about the different lenses you take as a coach and coachee. So it's a really magnificent book that I highly recommend. But she just came out over the last 2 years with an eye on equity. So coaching with an eye on equity, that she and that resource again is in that resources file that I sent over to Karen and Glennon that you might look into. So I highly recommend that book. And Karen,
I do have your resources that I'm adding to the website that everyone has access to.